Hello, my name is Gyles Brandreth, and I'm in a state of high excitement because I love the Hay Festival. I love this special club. I'm excited to be invited to be part of it today, and I'm in a special mood today because, as you can see, I'm wearing rather a festive jumper. It's a jumper bearing the image of Winnie-the-Pooh, created by the great A. Milne. If you're seeing this for the first time, live now, tonight, it's because today is World Winnie-the-Pooh Day. And why is it the 18th of January? Because that is the birthday of Alan Alexander Milne, the man who created Winnie-the-Pooh. First published, the first Winnie-the-Pooh story was published on Christmas Eve back in 1925. The book itself, the first Winnie-the-Pooh book, was published 100 years ago in 1926. So we're celebrating that centenary. We're celebrating Winnie-the-Pooh. We're celebrating, I hope, those enchanted places that, well, A. Milne brought to life with the 100 Acre Wood. And we may touch on some of the other authors, British and international, who also created enchanted places. Anyway, the reason I'm here is that I've written a book myself called Somewhere, a Boy and a Bear, which is a biography of A. Milne and Christopher Robin, the real Christopher Robin, who I was lucky enough to know in the 1980s. It's because of him that we're here at all. Christopher Robin, born in 1920, the only child of A. Milne and his wife, and then in 1921 he was given a teddy bear that became Winnie-the-Pooh. More of that later. So that's why I'm here. I know a bit about the subject, and I'm devoted to Winnie-the-Pooh and A. Milne. But I've got with me two very special people. And when I've introduced them, I want each of them perhaps to take us on the journey they went on when they first discovered Winnie-the-Pooh, and how their view of Winnie-the-Pooh has developed over the years and where they are now with regard to him. They are the brilliant Nadia Shireen and the equally brilliant Jane Riordan. I'm introducing you in reverse alphabetical order simply because, you know, the wonderful Hay Festival, which I should have mentioned actually, it's a charity and it does year-round activities, connecting audiences, and it's of course marking this special centenary. And the book is the Hay Festival Book Club pick for January. And copies are going to be available on the Hay Festival website. We'll come back to that. I also actually ought to remember the festival, the club is supported by the Unwin Charitable Trust, and you can find past events available to rewatch free online anytime now. But here and now, who's the festival brought together? These two interesting people. Nadia is a children's author. She's an illustrator. In fact, I think The Observer, I think I read in The Observer, this is the kind of description I'd give myself. I'm capable of writing an article in a newspaper about myself, saying that I'm the best and brightest picture book creator working in Britain today, and then quoting myself as saying I said it.
That's what I did, yeah.
I'm sure you didn't, Nadia. The Observer described you as the best and brightest picture book creator working in Britain today. I mean, was your debut picture book the one that I have got, or rather I got for one of my grandchildren, called Good Little Wolf? Is that yours?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Correct, yes.
And now what's interesting is I heard about that because it won an award. But I've also, on the shelves, we've got The Bumble Bear, which I think was much loved by the Book Trust. And, well, anyway, of your books, which is your favourite?
It's like choosing a favourite child, Gyles. I can't do that. It's always the one that I've just got rid of. It's always the one that I've just finished, because it's fresh and new and sparkly in my brain.
I have to tell you, I have grandchildren, and they have told me which their favourites are.
Okay.
The youngest boy chose Billy and the Beast. I'm not familiar with it. And okay. We have 7 grandchildren. Oh,
yes.
Seven. We have 7 grandchildren. 6 boys, 1 girl. And the girl chose Barbara Throws a Wobbler.
Ah, good for her.
That's my favourite.
Is that your favourite as well?
Yeah.
Anyway, you have won every prize going. The Waterson's Children's Book Prize, the Laugh Out Loud Book Awards, which really annoyed me because I was in that competition too. You're really...
Well,
I mean, we're being friendly, but actually, it must be said, Jane and I don't really like you.
Let me reassure you then, Gyles and Jane, I have been nominated for all those awards. Have I won? Have I? Heck. No. I have perfected a noble losing face.
Oh, wow.
I'm really doing. This is what I do. I go, and I just nod and smile to whoever's next to me and go, "Oh, I'm glad they won."
Well,
and then I clench my fist so hard,
Oh.
blood trickles.
I thought you'd won all these.
No,
Good grief!
Isn't it a tragedy?
Well, I mean, in a sense, does one want to win the Roald Dahl Funny Writer Award?
I want to win any. I'll take anything, Giles. I'm not fussy.
He could be
I'm
a bit
not proud.
macabre. I once travelled on a train with Roald Dahl from Paddington to the West Country.
Oh, blimey!
It was totally terrifying.
He was quite scary. I'd be terrified.
He was scary. Now Jane is a writer, but she's also an editor. Am I right that you were originally a primary school teacher, Jane?
I did train to be a primary school teacher, yes. Yeah. I've had lots of fun in classrooms. And I still get to do that now, which is the joy of this. It kind of brings all my favourite things together.
But you were a publisher as well.
Yes.
And am I right in thinking, because we're talking about the centenary of Winnie-the-Pooh, this is also the centenary of Michael Bond, born 1926, the creator of...
The Other Bear.
The Other Bear. We're allowed to say Paddington Bear. And later, if there's time, I'm going to tell you a story about the late Queen, Elizabeth II, whose centenary it also is in 2026. And I'm going to tell you about her and Paddington Bear and Winnie-the-Pooh. Quite interesting. But you've also worked on things like the Mr. Men?
I have, yeah. No, actually, I was lucky enough to meet Michael Bond when I worked on Paddington. So, I've had a happy, long career in publishing. And it's only in the last 10 years I've really been able to call myself an author or a sort of...
Well, because I'm so old, I can tell you that I knew Michael Bond quite well, and he gave me, and it's in my teddy bear collection, the oldest Paddington Bear still in existence. Not the original Paddington Bear, because that's lost, but one that was made for the television series in the 1970s that was voiced by Michael Hordern.
Yes, that's the one.
You'll be pleased to know I met Roger Hargreaves. And, better still, Thomas the Tank Engine. I met the Reverend Audrey. He is the creator of... Yeah, the old... Not the son, the father.
Oh, my goodness.
No,
yes.
He's really name-dropping. We're going to have to up
this
again.
is... So, you're in the presence of living history.
We're in trouble, Jane.
Jane, we're very excited. Nadia, we're very honoured. I will now shut up because I want to hear from both of you, starting with you, Nadia.
Yep.
How you discovered Winnie-the-Pooh, when it was, and how he has grown and developed in your mind.
Well, I was an extremely shy child, as many of us kind of authors, I think, were. When I chat to other people in children's books, I was very quiet, very shy, lucky enough to grow up in a house surrounded by books. My parents, my big brother, they were readers. But there weren't necessarily reams of children's books lying around, I don't know why that was the case. My parents were immigrants from another country, so we didn't kind of have that culture of, old English language picture books that had been handed down for generations. That wasn't in my household. There was an awful lot of Agatha Christie and P.G. Wodehouse around, which is fine. I inherited lots of books from older cousins. And I remember quite clearly staying in the home of some cousins and just quietly pootling amongst the bookshelves, which is what I would do. Whichever house I was in, I would always just gravitate towards the bookshelves and just look. And that's where I discovered the house at Pooh Corner. And I can just so clearly remember finding it, sitting myself down with it, and then just not moving. I think that's then all I did, was just sit there and read this book. And this is the best thing I've ever read. And I found myself just so immediately, I immediately took the hand of Pooh and Christopher Robin, and they led me into the 100 Acre Wood. And to be honest with you, a part of me has stayed there, has never really left. I think one of the great joys of being a children's book writer and illustrator is that you never really grow up. Now, that's a hindrance when trying to navigate the adult world. But it's a great gift because I feel permanently connected, actually, to that state of being. And it's no coincidence that I make picture books that we've mentioned, but I'll write books for a slightly older age group, kind of after, maybe 6+. And those stories are set in a wood called Grimwood. And it's these books contain a cast of wonderful characters, including an owl. And it's no coincidence, the influence of Winnie-the-Pooh and his friends is casts a huge, joyful shadow in my life. That's a poetic way of saying I have entirely ripped off Winnie-the-Pooh and friends for the Grimwood books. But no, my heart... I'm not a Milne scholar like I think both of you are, really, but my heart remains in the 100 Acre Wood, and I am glad for it and grateful for it. It's such a joy every time I go back. It's like you go home again.
You said that you read The House of Pooh Corner first. That's the second of the two books.
Yes, you're right.
1928.
Yes.
And I think there's a step difference in it. It's beautifully written, of course, and the ending of it is one of the most moving endings of any book ever written. And it's one that features Tigger, which, incidentally, all the creatures in the stories were real toys bought by A.A. Milne and his wife for Christopher Robin. They were bought at Harrods. So, Piglet and Kanga and Roo, the others, were all soft toys. Tigger's the only one that came actually from A.A. Milne's own imagination. Jane, what is your way into Winnie-the-Pooh? When did you first read the stories?
Well, unlike Nadia, I cannot remember a time when I didn't know Winnie-the-Pooh. So I have a feeling that my parents were the kind of parents who would start reading these books that are quite long, they're quite wordy. They're actually not for small children, but I think they probably started reading it to me before I even really knew what was going on. So it was just always there in my head. I was lucky enough to have two parents who were both passionate about books, and they both read to me. And my sister's a similar age, so we shared books together. So they were just always there. I was also lucky enough to live in a village which had a river running through it. So, my strongest association with Pooh is probably Pooh Sticks, which, again, I can't remember a time when I didn't know that game and I couldn't play it. And I was playing it at Christmas. It's always been there. And I know, Gyles, that you recently went and played Pooh Sticks in the Ashdown Forest. Now, the Ashdown Forest is interesting, isn't it? Because, it's utterly stunning, and you just feel like you've walked into one of Shepard's artworks when you're there. The trees, it really gets you. But actually, I would say the Pooh Sticks Bridge is a little disappointing because there's a lot of stick, and there's not much water.
Oh, really?
And actually, this is a testament to Winnie-the-Pooh and just how loved he is. There are so many people who go there to play Pooh Sticks that it's dammed up with sticks and not so much water.
Right.
It depends on the time of year when you go. Sometimes the water
you're right.
is flowing more freely. And sensible people pick up sticks on their way walking down the path. Don't wait till you get there to find the sticks.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to go. I've never been. I must make a pilgrimage.
It's a real treat, Nadia. I was doing an interview there once, and actually on the briefing sheet, we get given these sheets about what to say and what to do and don't talk about this. And on the briefing sheet it said, bring your own stick.
Oh.
What? But it's absolutely true. There's lots of sticks in the river, but not so many on the path.
Well, it's so funny you say that. You've just triggered this thin memory of, that where my aunt lives in Shrewsbury, where I'm from, there's a bridge by the pub. Is it the English bridge or the Welsh bridge, or maybe it's called something different? But even now, every time I walk over that bridge, that's the Pooh Sticks Bridge. The reason I don't know the name is because it's the Pooh Sticks Bridge.
Yeah.
And
we almost have our Pooh Sticks Bridge. Sorry.
For a moment about enchanted places, because both of you have described the 100 Acre Wood as an enchanted place. And that concept is a very interesting one in children's books. In relation to Winnie-the-Pooh, when I began researching the life of A.A. Milne, I knew that A.A. Milne felt that childhood itself was an enchanted place. Up until about the age of 12, he said that that's when the lifelong process of beginning to say goodbye begins. And there's a very affecting passage in his autobiography where he is talking really to his father, or about his father, who was a lovely man. He loved his father and he loved his childhood. But he suddenly realized at 12 that he was older than his father almost. And it's a passage that begins, "Farewell, Papa, with your shy, sad heart and your funny little ways." And he begins to patronise his own father. And A. Milne had the view that the true happiness, the pure happiness of childhood, is only available really to you before you're about 10, 11 or 12. And he loved enchanted places, which is why I began my research from my book in Jamaica, because A. Milne's father, J.V. Milne, was born and brought up in Jamaica. And I went to where he was brought up. His parents were missionaries, and it was an enchanted place, as you can imagine. Beautiful. If you've ever been to Jamaica, the countryside there can be so beautiful, and the trees were so green, and the sand was so golden, and the flowers, the colour, the birds, the bees, the butterflies. It was an enchanted place. But interestingly, and it was for him, A. Milne's enchanted place was London, where he was born in the 1880s. And it was the streets of London before there were cars. But it could be an enchanted place too, rolling your hoop from where they lived, into the centre of town. And, of course, Cotchford Farm, where Winnie-the-Pooh, the stories were written, was near the 100 Acre Wood, and that becomes the enchanted place. So we think of a wood as an enchanted place, but it can be anywhere.
Absolutely.
So I'd like from each of you your reflections on pure happiness and childhood, and does it ever end? And what makes an enchanted place? Nadia.
How interesting. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's not necessarily about the physical space you find yourself in. It's your way of looking at the world. An enchanted place can be something so unromantic to the naked eye. It could be a supermarket car park. So many of us are not blessed with a childhood in Jamaica, or somewhere that's, really beautiful. I grew up in quite a, very unremarkable, unromantic new town in the West Midlands. There was nothing romantic about lots of lay-bys and industrial parks, but it's actually, there still can be. I've got such a vivid memory of listening to music, being in the back of the car. You know that feeling when you're bundled in the back of the car on a long drive, and it's dusk and it's raining, and the raindrops are going down the window pane. And I think I've always had that slightly whimsical kind of romantic way of looking at the world. And I can remember conjuring stories, looking at a motorway, and looking out of that car window. It's a state of mind, I think. Maybe.
You've triggered something in my head, something good. Not every trigger warning is a dangerous one.
No, I was going to sound very sorry.
When I was a little boy, my parents had a Volkswagen car in the 1950s, a long time ago. And I had the joy of riding. My father let me sit on his knee while he was driving. And occasionally, I was allowed to steer. There were no seatbelts, and he was steer.
Yeah.
I was only allowed to steer the car when he was lighting his cigarette. That was the world we lived in. But at the back of this Volkswagen car was a little sort of place where I think you put luggage, but it was actually inside the car. And you could stand inside it. And you saying that, I'm realising that was one of the enchanted places of my childhood. I'm on a motorway.
Yes.
In a car full of smoke, fug from my father's cigarettes, in this little box at the back of the car. But magic is going on there.
Magic,
Giles.
Jane,
this is the opposite of what I was going to say, because I was about to say that for me, like, an enchanted place in childhood is a place of safety, and that sounds absolutely terrifyingly dangerous. But I think actually it's that emotional safety, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's what I was going to say, that it's that feeling of that you can gift to a child, that they just don't need to worry about what's for supper or what's happening tomorrow, or they can just purely live in the moment and feel very safe and have the emotional safety just to be in that moment. And I think that's what Winnie-the-Pooh is so brilliant at giving us, because it is just such a safe place, isn't it? Somewhere we can all retreat to.
What I think is distinctive about it as a safe place, I'm with you totally, it's different from the other enchanted places. Many have been created. You think of J.M. Barrie, the creator of Peter Pan, who was really the literary hero of A.A. Milne. He admired him almost more than anybody else. But Neverland is an enchanted place, but there's danger there. There are pirates. There is danger to life. Yeah. You think of Alice in Wonderland. Wonderland is, by description, it's Wonderland. But there are frightening things going on there. I mean, through the looking glass, there's a Jabberwocky.
It's unreliable. It's unreliable.
It's totally that Mad Hatter. Frankly, exactly. If he turned up at your children's party as the entertainer, you'd ask for the money back. So then, even in one of my favourite books, The Wind in the Willows, Kenneth Grahame's great one. The riverbank is an enchanted place. But actually, there are weasels and stoats and dangerous things going on. And I think in the world of Pooh, there is warmth, there is generosity. There's never really danger. There's a balloon popping. The worst that can happen is you get your head stuck in a jar of honey. So it's a different kind of enchanted place. Outside of the world of Winnie-the-Pooh, if you had to visit, either of you, another enchanted place created by a world-famous author, which secret garden or which wardrobe would
I was about to
each
say
of
I
you
might
walk
have to
through?
go into a wardrobe. I spent a lot of my childhood in wardrobes, actually, just desperately sort of tapping the back, hoping there was a way through. I never managed it. But that's pretty tempting, isn't it, to go through into snowy Narnia?
I think I'd love to visit Richard Starry's Busy Town.
Oh, that's lovely.
Wouldn't it be amazing?
So
Everyone,
hectic.
the cars, like pickles, apples, everyone busy doing their jobs, and I'd love to go to Busy
everyone's
Town.
going somewhere.
That's
Everyone's
very
going
good.
somewhere.
That's an illustrator speaking there.
Yes,
I think
maybe.
definitely. Now look, we've had so many questions sent in by people who are members of the club that they would like us to touch on, that I'd like to take a few of those now, and they'll take us in whatever direction we want to go in. This is a question from Lizzie, who is a Hay Festival Book Club member, and she asks, what do you think A.A. Milne would make of Pooh's cultural dominance today? Well, now, by cultural dominance, I suppose we mean that he survived 100 years. We're going to discuss later why he survived 100 years. Cultural dominance, that must include, I suppose, the merchandise.
The duvet cupboards.
Walt Disney, the Disneyfication of Pooh, which I may be controversial and don't mind. You may take a different view. But what do you think A.A. Milne would make of Pooh's cultural dominance today? Who's going to go first? Jane, give us a go on that one.
So I'm always... it's rare, isn't it, for a children's book to become an instant classic, but I think that was definitely the case with Winnie-the-Pooh. It was hugely successful from its first publication. So it was already a huge success in his lifetime. There's no question about that. There's no question about it sort of coming to light later. But at the same time, the way that it's permeated into so many other areas of culture, I do think he would be surprised by that, and maybe a little taken aback. I don't know if that would have been his style, for it to. But how could you not be delighted that people are still reading your book 100 years later? I mean, that's what everyone hopes for, isn't it?
I'm going to give you a direct answer to that in a moment, but let's hear Nadia's view first.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because the landscape that we live in now in terms of merchandising and how long that these brands can live on for and so many different permutations would, I suspect, have been kind of beyond anyone's thinking maybe when the books first came out. I mean, Gyles, I defer to you on this because I know that Milne was, he was a playwright. He wrote many other things. Was there, I don't know if this is deviating too much, but what was there tension? Did he have a kind of inattention about kind of the amount of attention that Pooh got compared to all his other pieces of work, and how did that affect his writing after Pooh, post-Pooh output? You are now hitting the nail absolutely on the head. The question is, what do you think A. Milne would make of Pooh's cultural dominance today? He would despair. Really?
Is the short answer. A. Milne wrote more than 1 million words. In the 2 Pooh books and the 2 books of poems, which we must touch on, I hope, when we were very young and now we are 6, they amount to just 70,000 words.
My word.
70,000 words out of a lifetime's output of more than 1 million words.
Gosh.
He saw himself, if you met him today, he'd say he was a writer, and you'd say, oh, what kind of writer? He'd say, well, I'm a playwright in the main. That's what he'd tell you.
Yeah.
He wrote more than 40 plays and screenplays. In the 1920s, 100 years ago, he was one of the most successful playwrights in the English language in the world. In 1920, he had 7 plays running in the West End. Through the 1920s, he had plays on Broadway and in London. He had a film company which he formed with Leslie Howard, went on to star in Gone with the Wind. They made movies that he wrote the scripts for. He was a fine novelist. I hope we may have time to touch on what his novels tell us. He was delighted to write the 2 children's books and enjoyed doing them, and enjoyed their success, as did Christopher Robin being the hero of them. But by the end of the 1920s, early 1930s, he couldn't bear it. All anybody would ever ask about was Winnie-the-Pooh. And Jane, you're absolutely right. It was a global success immediately, as his children's poetry books had been. 1924, When We Were Very Young, was published, book of children's verse. Can you imagine? The year before, he'd published a murder mystery, The Red House Mystery, which had been a huge success, a bestseller, a murder mystery. Can you imagine how depressed his publishers must have been when he then wrote in to say, well, my next book's going to be a collection of whimsical verses for children? Their hearts sank. Imagine if Lee Child got in touch with his publisher saying, I've got a great idea, some amusing collection of Lee Child's limericks.
Let's not discount this, Gyles. That's generally what happens these days.
Yeah. Well, they didn't, but they did publish. Because it was A. Milne, they published these poems. They published on the same day as F. Scott Fitzgerald published The Great Gatsby. Same day.
Wow.
And within a year, The Great Gatsby had sold, not bad going, The Great Gatsby had sold 20,000 copies. Pretty good for a novel in the 1920s in America, 20,000 copies. A. Milne's book, When We Were Very Young, published on the same day, had sold 200,000 copies before Christmas. Before Christmas. And became, and I think remains after Shakespeare, the best-selling book of poetry in the history of the world.
My goodness.
So this man is a hugely successful author. And yes, Winnie-the-Pooh comes along. It brings him even greater fame and fortune. In the early days, Winnie-the-Pooh did well, but not as well as the poetry books had done. But it quickly grew. The merchandising began almost immediately. And his despair began almost immediately. But where he would have been happy, we can come back to this, but where he would have been happy, I think, is in the cultural dominance. He would hate you just thinking of him as a children's author, but he would quite like the fact that he'd made an impact. He was interested in the merchandising from the beginning. The first Winnie-the-Pooh crockery was produced in 1928. He was producing the Winnie-the-Pooh calendar, the Winnie-the-Pooh diary, the Winnie-the-Pooh games. He was into all of that. He was quite excited when Disney first showed an interest in the 1930s. And though it was after his time, when Disney really came on board in 1961, he would have been content with that. E.H. Shepard, the famous illustrator, who I'm sure we'll talk about more in a moment, didn't like the Disneyfication, nor did Christopher Robin. But I'm reconciled to it. Okay, so that's the cultural dominance question. Got to have time for another one. There's so many of them. Rebecca asks, this is a different kind of question, if you had to pick just one, is there a favourite story in the Pooh books that you have, and why?
I have mine.
Yes,
Go
okay,
on,
Jane.
go on,
Jane, put her
Go
hand
on,
up
Jane.
first. Jane,
Go, Jane.
Mine's Eeyore's birthday.
Oh, you've taken mine, Jane.
Oh no, sorry.
That's okay. Go on.
I mean, there are so many to choose on.
There are so many.
It's so seeped in pathos, and you know, there's a thing about birthdays, isn't there, where there's a lot of expectation around them, and it's difficult to live up to it. So whether you're trying to please somebody else on their birthday, or whether you're excited about being pleased yourself on your birthday, there's often a bit of disappointment along the way. And I just think Milne captures that so brilliantly in that story. I mean, the ending when Eeyore is left with the empty jar of honey, you know, the disastrous present. I mean, everyone knows the story, I don't need to tell you, but the disastrous presents where Pooh has gifted him as a very last minute, didn't know it was his birthday. We know that feeling, the anxiety. He's gifted him the pot of honey. Of course, he's eaten the honey on the way to giving it. Piglet, again, has had a last-minute panic. What's he going to give? He's got his balloon. He pops it on the way. So these disastrous presents, an empty jar, a pop balloon, and yet somehow Eeyore, who never finds joy in anything, finds joy in that. And I just love it. I absolutely love it. I don't think anyone can write a better story about birthdays.
Well, Nadia, you've got a challenge now. You've got to come up with a different one.
It's the easiest challenge there is, isn't it? Really. I mean, spot the common denominator. Well, then I'll go for Eeyore loses a tail.
Oh.
So we're back with our lovely donkey. But my reason's quite simple. It's the illustrations by E.H. Shepard at the end of that story, when Eeyore finds his tail again. The unbridled joy. We see Eeyore cartwheel, stand on his head, glance back admiringly at his tail. It makes me weep. Honestly, tears prick my eyes every time I look at those illustrations, because Eeyore's such a contained character most of the time throughout the stories. So when you see these kind of sparkles of joy, it's more affecting than it would be with any of the other characters, because it's so rare and it's just so truthful and heartfelt. So I suppose it would be Eeyore loses a tail, but I mean, I love them all. I love it when we first meet Tigger and he's a jagular. The jagular up in the tree, you know.
I think what you're also telling us is, or explaining to us, is why these books have lasted 100 years, because they work whatever your age. You're responding to them now as grown-up people.
Yeah.
And children respond possibly in a slightly different way. But they are, though they are about animals, and toys, actually, except for Christopher Robin, they're about humans. And we recognise the characters, don't we? That's why there is cultural dominance. I saw our present Prime Minister described the other day as an Eeyore in a newspaper, without any explanation. He's an Eeyore, as though everybody knew. And people describe me as being Tiggerish. I mean, we know what we mean by that. So that is the genius of it. But you mentioned illustrations, which you must now talk on this, Nadia, because our third question comes from Jules, who says the book illustrations are as iconic as the writing itself. What's the story behind E.H. Shepard's commission, which I can tell you? Did A.A. Milne like it? I can tell you that. But you clearly, and you are an illustrator as well as a writer, you feel, Nadia, that they're integral. E.H. Shepard, for you, is almost the co-author?
Yes, I mean, I'm a big believer in, not just because it's my job, but because I truly believe this, in the joy of visual literacy. And when you look at a great picture book or a book with many illustrations in, like Winnie-the-Pooh and the House of Pooh Corner, the illustrations shouldn't just be kind of, you don't want the text to say, this is an apple, and then have a drawing of an apple. What you want is there to be a magical kind of sense of interplay between the text and between the image. And that's what E.H. Shepard does here. There's so much storytelling in his line, in his, in every gesture, which might look, some of the drawings look deceptively kind of simple, that they're not simple at all. There's so much emotion conveyed in posture. One of the interesting things about the illustrations in these books are actually the facial features. I mean, I do very cartoonish facial features in my illustrations, really hammering the point home with a sledgehammer, big eyes and big expression. Yeah, Shepard doesn't really do that. A lot of it is in pose, gesture, where the paws are. Eeyore, for example, his head bowed down. How are the magic in these drawings? How do they express a whole other story so well? And he's not just parroting Milne's text. It's a beautiful dance between the two. The images are telling you something else as well. They're conveying a further sense of mood. And that works so well. Then when you kind of put that together, it's this beautiful marriage, I think. I don't know, I'm using lots of silly phrasing because it is magic. That's why I love children's books. It's magic. That great, wonderful text, magical imagery come together to create a kind of indescribable third thing that we bring to it as a reader, and as a reader of the text and of the image. And it's that kind of chemical reaction between the three things that makes something, I think. Did any of that make sense?
It made total sense. You are magic in your own way. Jane, what's your take on it?
You can't think about the stories without seeing those images, can you? It's just so integral to it. And I know, Gyles, you'll be able to tell the story much better, but I know that it wasn't always an easy relationship between Milne and Shepard, but you would never know that as a reader. And actually, a reader doesn't need to get bogged down with that, I think, because for a reader coming to it, it's just always been that way, and it's unquestioningly perfect. I can't put it as eloquently as Nadia, but I just love Shepard's art, and it's always there in my head when I'm writing the new sequels and prequels to Pooh. That's what I'm picturing. I'm hearing the voices, but I can see them, right? They're dancing around in my head. So what a gift to a writer.
And it must be said, A. Milne acknowledged that by sharing his royalty with E.H. Shepard, which was not necessarily
Quite
something he
rare,
had to do.
yeah.
He volunteered to do that and gave generously to E.H. Shepard. Intriguingly, the first illustrator of Winnie-the-Pooh is this illustration here that's on the cover of my book. Can you see the picture? It's by somebody called J.H. Dowd. That is the original look of Winnie-the-Pooh.
Wow.
And Christopher Robin. And I thought to put it on the cover of my book because it was the first drawing there was of Winnie-the-Pooh and Christopher Robin. A.A. Milne himself wrote the stories, and when he first wrote his first book of children's poetry, somebody suggested they need illustrating and suggested Ernest Shepard, whose work A.A. Milne knew because A.A. Milne had been, for the first 20 years of the 20th century, a leading columnist in the weekly magazine Punch. Punch was a humorous magazine sold all over the English-speaking world. It was a comical magazine, had cartoons, it was illustrated. It was huge. And this is before the era, of course, of podcast, of radio, of television, of films, of any of these things. So popular magazines then were the way one communicated. And A.A. Milne became a star as a columnist. And Ernest Shepard and J.H. Dowd were both illustrators for Punch. And somebody suggested, try Ernest Shepard. And A. Milne's first reaction, and we know this because it's in writing, was, oh, really? I don't think he's very good.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, all right, if you want. And then the illustrations were sent in, and he liked them. And so when Pooh came along, he thought, yes, we'll go with Ernest Shepard. You're right. There was tension between them, but that's quite good. I mean, it was a creative tension. They're portrayed sometimes as bosom buddies. There was a film a few years ago, Goodbye, Christopher Robin, which had them really for reasons of the plot, as though they were best friends. They weren't. They were good colleagues.
Yes.
And sensibly, A. Milne invited Shepard down to Cochford Farm to stay and to go into the woods, to walk, to see the actual scene. He met Christopher Robin, the real boy. He actually handled the toys. Though Pooh is based on the teddy bear in Shepard's family, not on the original Winnie-the-Pooh. We have to be a bit quiet about that, because if you go to the New York Public Library where the real Winnie-the-Pooh now lives, people say, it doesn't look much like Pooh. Well, that's because actually it's Ernest Shepard's son's teddy bear that is the model for Winnie-the-Pooh.
I think he was called.
And didn't Growler
Growler.
come to us? Did Growler not came to a sticky end? Didn't he? I think
Growler came to a sticky end during the Second World War. Growler no longer exists, sadly. The one thing I would say, and of course, E.H. Shepard is amazing, and the illustrations are integral. But I will say this. I think the genius, I mean, he was a genius illustrator, but the original genius is A.A. Milne. He wrote the stories. He created the world. Ernest Shepard illustrated many books by many authors. Hundreds, literally, of illustrations. None of them has stood the test of time in the way that Winnie-the-Pooh has. So it was a magical combination, but for me, the words come first. So, but that's me. I'm not new, Nadia. I can't. I mean,
I don't think there needs to be a competition, Giles.
No,
the alchemy of word and image is what we're after.
Yeah.
I mean, why deny that either of them they're genius?
I'm not going to. I'm just going to give primacy to Milne. That's all.
Okay.
Jack asks, a lot of us will have experience of Winnie-the-Pooh first via Disney. Now, this question I think is a bit unexpected and rather a good one. What are your thoughts on adaptation as a tool for bringing people back to books? Start with you, Jane.
Well, I've got two things I'm thinking about that. So actually, I've been very careful well, not careful, but I've made the conscious decision to avoid the Disney since I've been writing Winnie-the-Pooh.
How many sequels have you written? How many sequels have you written?
Four.
Wow.
Because as I said earlier that I've got Milne's voice in my head, and I needed it to stay there. And whilst obviously as a child I did see snippets of the Disney and I'm familiar with it, I didn't want to rewatch it. It's really interesting if you put in sort of lots of people use Winnie the Pooh quotes at weddings and funerals and things, and if you put it in, if you ask the internet about Winnie the Pooh quotes, you get lots of quotes that are not A.A. Milne. Like the internet is flooded with words that we think are A.A. Milne, but actually I'm imagining they come from the Disney, or I don't know where they come from, but they're not. So I have to be really careful about that. So I've actually made a conscious effort to avoid it. But having said that, what I'm doing, writing prequels and sequels, is exactly the same as what Disney was doing. It's trying to keep the brand alive. It's finding new audiences. It's finding new generations. And then the hope is always that you're then leading people back to the original books and the original poetry. And that's always what I'm trying to do. You know, when I'm stepping into these enormous shoes full of trepidation, that I just
honey,
hope,
actually.
Full of honey, yeah. I was gonna say.
yeah. I always hope that the end result will be that it gets people talking about Winnie-the-Pooh again, that it gets people reading those books again. And I think that's exactly what Disney have done as well. So I just think, bring it on. The more, whatever way we can get kids to books, I am like cheering for that.
So Nadia, how are you on this as a tool? Do we accept adaptations, different versions, to bring people back to the original? Do you think it does do that?
I think so. I think we've got to maybe, I say we, I mean, not everyone does this, but I think we need to relax a little bit and remember that we can different forms of media can have a conversation. That's fine. There can be something on the radio, there can also be a film, there can also be a TV series, and there can also be a series of books. And it's not either or. We don't have to choose just one. How wonderful. We're in a world of abundance. And rather than, I think, running away from that and harking back to a maybe slightly mythological time when none of the, it's only books and that's all we had. I mean, I'm pushing 50. And when I was growing up, I'm afraid. And when I was, and I had television, which I watched all the television that was available to me. And I listened to music and I read the music press and comics and books. And I even started to play computer games. And this was all happening at the same time, and that's fine.
And you've turned out all right.
I've turned out. Well, I mean, if the jury's out, but I suppose what I mean is that stories take different forms, and we shouldn't be scared of kind of the cross pollination of these stories.
And I think, I'm with you there. And I think adaptations often are interesting and controversial. I mean, think of Agatha Christie, who has been adapted so many times in so many different ways. We can have a whole evening at home over dinner arguing about Kenneth Branagh's moustaches as Poirot in his films, as opposed to the definitive Poirot, which is David Suchet.
Of course, it's Suchet.
But I mean, it's quite fun, all of that. So they're being alternate, and Disney have introduced one or two new characters to the Pooh repertoire, which you may have done as well, Jane. Have you been bold enough to do that?
It's not always within my gift, but like sometimes the trustees of the Pooh and Shepard Trust, who are very wise people who sit and check everything I do, quite rightly, thank goodness, they do occasionally allow me to slip a new character in, but not always. It's hot, it's very debated, and it's I don't go wild by myself.
And have you found any of your wisdom or wit, because the original A.A. Milne is so witty and wise. There's a lot of philosophy in it, grown-up philosophy in it. Do you find any of your lines being quoted on the internet as being Winnie-the-Pooh originals?
Oh, gosh. I don't think I'm wise enough, Gyles. I haven't searched for any of my own lines.
How interesting.
Yeah, maybe. That's something to aim for, isn't it?
It is something to aim for.
I've
written a series of 7 novels, murder mysteries, called the Victorian Murder Mysteries, featuring Oscar Wilde, the real Oscar Wilde, as my detective, with Arthur Conan Doyle, who was a genuine friend of his. They really knew one another. as his sidekick, as his Watson. So my Sherlock Holmes is Oscar Wilde, and my sidekick is Arthur Conan Doyle. And I've given various, obviously, I mean, I've used a lot of Wilde's original lines that I've stolen from him in the novels. They're murder mysteries, but there are 7 of them, and they've been internationally published. And so if you look up quotations by Oscar Wilde, one of the top ones that comes up is, what is this one? If I get it right. Oh, there's nothing quite like an unexpected death for lifting the spirits. Now, that's a line of mine.
Oh.
But if you go to
Wow.
Oscar Wilde, there it is.
Well,
So
there you go.
many Oscar Wilde lines were actually said by Mark Twain and vice versa.
Yeah.
And much of the A. Milne stuff must be looked at in a suspect way, because
Yeah.
most of it, you are right, it's bowdlerized by Disney. Interesting question here from Ange. I continue to turn to this book, the original Winnie-the-Pooh, as an adult when I want a sense of calm. What big books bring you comfort? So this is taking it slightly away from A. Milne, though it could be one of his other books if you wanted. But what books bring you to calm? Because calm is lovely. It's a lovely thing to have, calm, isn't it?
I think it's not a book as much as an author, but I will pick up any P.G. Wodehouse book,
Oh,
and I don't even bother starting at the beginning, because there's no need really. Just kind of flick. Here we go. Well, Bertie seems to have lost a cow creamer again, and it immediately, because the same silly things happen in every book, and I find it deeply comforting. Those books were lined around the house when I was growing up, so I don't know if that's got something to do with it. But I think it's just they're so funny and they're reliable in their kind of
Well,
their silliness.
it's what's called the security of known relationships.
Yeah,
You know where you are with Bertie.
you absolutely know
and
where you
Jeeves.
are.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be. A. Milne and P.G. Wodehouse were friends for a while.
Doesn't surprise me, actually.
And they were part of that generation of authors who all called themselves by initials. P.G. Wodehouse,
Yes.
A. Milne, H.G. Wells, you name it.
Yeah.
T.S. Eliot, they all worked on the initial basis. But they fell out, unfortunately, during the Second World War because I'm afraid A. Milne called out P.G. Wodehouse for his naivety in making those broadcasts,
the broadcasts
from Germany during the Second World War.
Right. Well, I think P.G. Wodehouse fell out with quite a few people.
Yeah,
around
which is a
that
shame.
point.
But my gosh, what a great writer. For you, Jane, what book
For
brings you
me,
calm?
it sounds a bit highbrow, and I'm not really a highbrow reader, or I don't normally read such long books either. But for me, it might be something like David Copperfield, because I remember my dad reading it aloud to me, and in lockdown, we had this idea. Do you remember in lockdown how we all kind of ran out of things to say to our nearest and dearest over Zoom? Because you hadn't done anything, all you could talk about was also, what did you have for lunch? And, because none of us had been out doing our normal things, but we were all trying to communicate. So I was trying to communicate with my parents a lot, but didn't have anything to say. So we struck upon the idea of getting my dad to read David Copperfield again over Zoom to his children and grandchildren, because obviously they hadn't had that experience. And it was so comforting. I mean, I think I slept through about half of it, because once I got the first couple of pages of each session, and then something about his voice, and I knew the story, and all that I could see all my family on the screen. Fell fast asleep. Very
beautiful.
deeply comforting though. Yeah.
Very
and
comforting.
it's a nice long book, so it kept us going all the way through.
If your father's reading is no longer available on Zoom, I do recommend the reading by Martin Jarvis of David Copperfield. Martin Jarvis, one of the great readers of books on audio. It's 24 hours. My wife and I listened to it. And as you say, it is, being read to, I think, is very important.
Yes, absolutely.
To provide
Absolutely.
comfort.
Yeah.
I do a podcast called Rosebud, where I talk to people about their first memories. And this week I was talking to the actor Dominic West. And he was telling me how he'd shared a bedroom with his sister, who didn't mind sharing a bedroom with him. He'd been in another room, but he was moving in with his sister. So long as he would stare at her in adjacent beds with big eyes until she fell asleep. And it's a funny idea, but the idea, he had to sort of lie in bed facing her, staring at her, and eventually she would nod off. But for me, there's nothing nicer than being read to fall asleep. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, actually, funny enough, for comfort reading, I wouldn't recommend the novels of A. Milne. But if you want to start on one, I would recommend Two People. I don't know why I'm saying this now, because I want to get that in before we run out of time. Two People is a novel by A. Milne. He writes a lot about women. I don't know how satisfactory his marriage was in the long term. It lasted a long time. He was very happy at times during it. But he certainly, I think, understood women. And the women I've met who've read his work think he did understand women. And it's about relationships. And it's a very satisfying read. Do you know the novels of Elizabeth Taylor? English novelist, 1940s, 1950s. Not the actress, a wonderful English novelist. They are comfort reads, but they're not calming necessarily, because there's something slightly disturbing always going on, as there is in a way in David Copperfield. But fundamentally, it's all right. So,
and is the kind of warmth and wit, that voice that we know from Winnie-the-Pooh, is that present in his adult novels?
I mean, the reation I think that Winnie-the-Pooh works so well is the dialogue is so good.
Yes.
This is a playwright.
You
By
can
the time he's writing
exactly.
Winnie-the-Pooh, he's written plays, 30 or more plays that have been hits across the world. So he knows what he's doing when it comes to dialogue.
Yes.
And it's full of puns and jokes and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and the way they misunderstand each other and talk over each other, and
the adverbs.
Yes.
There's it was always thoughtfully, and all. What's the one that he always uses that makes me laugh? It will come back to me. Carry on. Reese asks, are there any contemporary books you feel will resonate over the next century in the way that Pooh has managed to? Wow.
Oh, wow.
My word. I don't know, because it's not just Pooh. I mean, Winnie-the-Pooh's not just a book. It's kind of a way of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's an extremely hard one to pinpoint, apart from my books, obviously.
I'd like to think Philip Pullman will.
Yeah.
Because it's world building as well, obviously for a different age group.
There will
fabulous, but
maybe the world of Julia Donaldson. Julia Donaldson has created, along with Axel Scheffler. Now, if you want to talk about the alchemy between an illustrator and a writer, just look at that pairing. And certainly, I would say the Gruffalo, Stickman. Look, they've become part of Christmas now in this country. And when we think of great cultural exports of this country, I think that pairing that will be up there. Absolutely.
What I think is interesting about Winnie-the-Pooh is that he is a character, and he's got a personality, and as Piglet, as Roo and Kanga and Tigger, we know these people, and I think it's personality that helps a book survive. Peter Pan is a mythic figure and has lasted. Sherlock Holmes is a mythic figure and has lasted. Dracula is a myth. Interestingly, there once was a dinner that took place that I discovered when I was writing my Oscar Wilde murder mysteries. Oscar Wilde, Arthur Conan Doyle, Robert Louis Stevenson, a man called Hornung, who was the brother-in-law of Arthur Conan Doyle, Bram Stoker, Jane Barry, all sitting at dinner. 6 men at dinner at the same time. I think it's the Chelsea Arts Club, the 1880s. Wow. And these 6 men created these mythic figures. I mean, Oscar Wilde, The Portrait in the Attic, or indeed The Myth That Is Oscar Wilde. Robert Louis Stevenson, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Bram Stoker, Dracula. Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes. His brother-in-law, Hornung, actually created Raffles, the Gentleman Cracksman. But what was there in Victorian England, in the fog that enabled these figures to
what
create...
What were they drinking? What were they eating? I'll have some of what they're eating.
Peter Pan, these characters that live 125 years later, all these characters are alive. And Winnie-the-Pooh is alive 100 years on. So finally, I need to ask you, why do you think Winnie-the-Pooh has lasted 100 years?
Jane, do you want to go first, or shall I?
Do you want me to go
first?
first?
Do you want to go?
Jane,
go on.
You're the one who's carrying on the legend. You're the one who needs him to go on for 100 years because you've got a vested interest.
Well, I always wonder, do you not think it might be something to do with the fact that there are no grown-ups? I love the fact that there are no grown-ups. I love the fact that they've just got this bonkers kind of freedom. You know, you've got this little boy running around an enormous 100 acre wood with his toys. It's safe, and yet it's completely free. And I can't help feeling that that's probably what we all hope for childhood. You know, wouldn't that be a lovely gift to give to the next generation, just to allow them just to run free? And even if they can't physically run free, I mean, we don't really want to send sort of 5-year-old boys out into the woods by themselves for too long. Even if they can't physically do that, it's the imaginative space that they're entering. Because of course, Winnie-the-Pooh is Christopher Robin's imagination. It's what happens to his toys in his head, as perceived by his father. So it's allowing children to have those dreams, to have those ideas, to have that space to play, I think. For me, it's a lot about play, having the time and the space to play without adults getting in the way.
Yeah, very important.
Nadia, what's your answer to that?
I think children are, I think, often underestimated in terms of their intelligence, their sense of humour and their imagination. And this is a book that does not talk down to its reader. It meets the reader eye to eye. We are part of Christopher Robin's gang, and we always will be. And I think that's part of the magic of this book, is it looks its reader in the eye, doesn't patronise the reader. It's as funny a book as you'll read, and as soulful and as clever a book as you'll read. So I think that's why we are still talking about the wonderful Pooh and Friends after all these years.
I'm going to give my answer in just a moment, after I've given us each an opportunity to plug our own work. Because he was very concerned. He left a quarter of his money to the Royal Literary Fund, A.A. Milne.
Did he?
He cared about all. He was a professional writer who respected writers, which is why he didn't want to be put in a box as the man who just made Winnie-the-Pooh. He did all sorts of things, and he valued. He was a polemicist. He was a poet. He was a playwright. He was a fine novelist. He wrote murder mysteries, and he wrote these 4 special children's books. Which, Nadia, of your books, if people who are members of this lovely Hay Festival Book Club, which of your books would you suggest they go and get?
Well, I imagine people watching this who are keen on groups of animals who live in woods. And I've written a series of books. They're called Grimwood. And they're about 2 urban foxes from the big city who are forced to flee and go to this bucolic place called Grimwood. They think it's bucolic. It's not. All the animals are very strange. It's been described as Winnie-the-Pooh meets the pythons. Wow. I'm not comparing myself to Winnie-the-Pooh or the pythons. Someone else said that, but that gives you a taste of maybe what the Grimwood books are about.
We're on our way to Grimwood right now. Jane,
Great.
Where do you want to take us?
Well, if you could be patient, there's going to be a big book coming out in October, which is going to be celebrating the 100 years of Winnie-the-Pooh. I'm sorry, Gyles, the book title is very similar to yours. But maybe people should, but they just need to buy both, don't they? Yours is strictly biography, and mine is strictly fiction. It's called A Little Boy and His Bear, and it's trying to, in some small way, sum up everything that's been wonderful about the last 100 years of Winnie-the-Pooh, and give it a little full stop, and of course a party. And there's a fabulous illustration in there where the illustrator, this is my idea, and I think the illustrator was very cross with me, but I asked if it would be possible to have 100 animals in the picture for children to count.
Lovely.
Brilliant.
My editor assures me that they're all there. I lose count every time without fail, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to celebrate 100 years. So Little Boy and His Bear, that's publishing in October, so it's a bit of a wait.
That's a treat for October. My immediate treat that I offer you is a big fat book called.
Gosh, it is fun.
It's a proper book. I've written many biographies over the years. This is the one I think I've enjoyed the journey most, because it's an exploration of childhood and enchanted places and our childhoods, as well as, of course, the childhood of A.A. Milne himself and Christopher Robin, who had very mixed feelings about being Christopher Robin, ultimately was reconciled to it, but along the way there were difficulties. So it's about A.A. Milne, about Christopher Robin, about Christopher Robin's own daughter, Claire Milne, whose own story is fascinating and who I was lucky enough to know, a lovely girl. And, of course, about Winnie-the-Pooh. So that's called Somewhere a Boy and a Bear, biography of A.A. Milne and Winnie-the-Pooh by me, Gyles Brandreth. And I think the reason that Winnie-the-Pooh has lasted 100 years is simply this. Of course, it's beautifully written, and that counts. It works whatever your age is. The characters are recognisable because they have human qualities as well as being animals. But also we live in this terrible, troubled, dark, desperate world. If you look at the news, you want to turn it off. And you can turn it off. Because in Winnie-the-Pooh, you have a passport. You just open the page, and it's a passport to somewhere very special that we all need. It's a passport to a world of what childhood offers. The pure happiness of being young again. That's it from the three of us. So my thanks to Nadia and to Jane. I'm Gyles. My thanks to the Hay Festival Book Club. How wonderful to be part of this book club. We meet regularly. Next month there's going to be another gripping title. And I hope you will, join us again. So follow the book club's new Instagram. Oh, it's a new Instagram page at Hay Festival Book Club. Yay! To hear it first. And go out, book Jane's book for October. Go out and find Grimwood now. Buy my book immediately. But meanwhile, just take comfort and joy from rereading Winnie-the-Pooh by A.A. Milne. Bye-bye. You can wave, girls. We're all waving. Be more Pooh. That's our message. And that's our